I'm joined by Ben. Ben, you first piqued my interest when I saw your incredible skills in pastries on Instagram. I was quite impressed at not just the dedication that you put into each and every individual item, but also into continual learning. And I saw that you went away and did a course.
Yes.
So I'd love to hear everything about that. But to begin with, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into your skill?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Ben Costello. I'm current head baker at Farrow Bakery here in Bristol. And I originally started out as a chef. I was at university, kind of like forced into it a little bit by my school and my teachers. They were just like, you cannot be a chef. It's just like not a career to go into.
Right.
And that just instantly like killed everything for me. So I went to uni, did a year, and in the end, once I started to get a bit of like self-belief, I just dropped out, went to my nearest Michelin restaurant at the time,
Wow.
and was just like, can I have an apprenticeship? Can I have a job? Whatever. And yeah, did an apprenticeship there. And then about a year or so later, they had a bakery in the hotel. And I was just like, watching this guy on his own, like pump out loads of stuff was just like really inspiring to me. He came in super early. He was just working away and he just like had me hooked. And so then, yeah, it was from there. I was just like, I need to do this. Worked in the kitchen for a while, did all the sections, moved around, worked in a few 2-star restaurants on a stage, and then just moved around the country into different bakeries, taking skills, meeting people, moving around, and then yeah, I ended up here.
What initially grabbed your interest into the chef world?
It was like my mum cooking. That was like the first thing for me. She was in the kitchen. I used to spend a load of time in there growing up as a kid with her, just like sitting on the counter. And that was where like food started to blossom for me. In terms of chefing itself, it was just like what I thought I could do with food. There wasn't anything else. It was just like, I really love food more than anything. What can I do? And it was to be a chef. And my kind of like competitive mindset was like, I need to be the best chef. At the time, it wasn't baking. So I was just like, where can I go that's the best? And it was the Chester Grosvenor at the time, had a Michelin star. It was like close enough to home where I could work. There was also Fresh, which had a Michelin star, and I'd work there on my days off. And I was just like, yeah, I was just on this like dogged pursuit to be the best.
Well, I've noticed that cooking in general has spiked in popularity. Have you seen The Bear?
I have, yes.
Series? See, that's an insane...
It's good.
How much does that represent what it's like to work in a...
The Bear is pretty accurate.
Really?
Yeah. It's like a little triggering, and I'm sure most people in the trade would say that too, but in a kind of like good way in terms of like showing the fallout from like kitchens that operate in that way. And I haven't watched the latest series, but I know it kind of also projects the change that is possible. But I love it. I'm just so entrenched in food that I watch everything. So it's good.
I watch a lot of Gordon Ramsay and Pierre White.
Yes, yeah.
It's incredibly inspiring and intricate how far food can get. With the British cuisine, I find the actual British food is pretty standard stuff. Fish and chips, pies and chips. But it's so inspired by all of the Europe nations around it just pouring in that it has become, from what I can tell, a sort of hub for cuisine culture. And you see all of these Korean restaurants and things gaining popularity. But the biggest thing I've noticed is bakeries. And I remember in Australia, when I was growing up, the most bakery thing you could get was a cinnamon scroll or a cinnamon swirl. But the difference between that, what I've grown up with, and the absolute art that you create is night and day. How does it go from just mass-produced plain stuff to the things that you... What's the influence there? What changed?
I would say it was like refinement. And also, I think we're moving away from that like more is more kind of industrial style production, which was very much the case with like craft bakeries as well. And now there's this move towards refinement, focus on food systems, and how it's more of just, or it's more about the interaction between the baker, the grower, farmer, the miller, and the consumer, as opposed to just a money-making scheme, essentially, to produce huge volumes of things. Yeah.
I watched probably 2 hours worth of this Japanese baker, and he lives in a remote area, gets up at 3 a.m., starts putting all of the ingredients together for sourdough, cuts his own wood every morning for the fire.
Yeah.
It's so intricate, but also it's like not only is he in a trance, but watching it, you also get into a trance watching it. What's it feel like to actually do your craft?
Yeah, it's kind of like a huge balancing act where everything you do compounds onto the next thing. So I'm always thinking like, well, first put the coffee machine on, but then I'm thinking like ovens, what's in the oven, what's going through the mixer, how long is this going to prove for? If I do this now, it'll change this, and it's just that constant juggling act, which I love. Yeah.
So I imagine in some ways you have to be of a particular personality type to get into baking because it is all consumed.
Yeah.
Does that match with you?
I think so. I mean, I in the kitchens noticed that people would sort of veer to certain things depending on their skill set and like personality. I was drawn to baking because it was kind of like in some ways isolated. You were like tucked away a bit. I was naturally quite shy, but like I responded better to like the intricacies of it. So it was very precise. You had to follow recipes. There was a lot less like on the fly kind of stuff. And that suits me really well. And then that's translated throughout the job. Like I work with people who are better at sort of being on the ovens for hours a day, just loading stuff. There's other people who really excel doing croissants. And yeah. And for me, it was just about being good at all of it.
It really is an art form as far as I can see. And when I try to bake, even when I follow a recipe, it doesn't turn out very well. So how do you develop your skill? Is it just trial and error?
It's repetition.
Okay.
It's like, and saying that, it's just like responding in the situation. Like, I still make mistakes now. I'll miss the salt out of a mix. I'll overprove something. I'll leave something in the oven too long. But it's like knowing how to respond, and that just comes with repetition. And it's quite hard to achieve that at home because essentially you make like one loaf and then that's it. And you either have to wait like a week or two until you do it again.
Yeah, right.
And for me, I just get to do it on the daily, every day. So when people come in and they're asking about like, how can I get better at home? I'm just like, come in, spend a day with us, shape 100 loaves, which would take you like a month to do at home.
Yeah.
And you can do it in a day. And yeah, it's just repetition.
That makes sense.
And time. Yeah.
Yeah. What are you working on at the moment? What skill are you developing?
So mainly milling at the moment. It's something I've been fortunate enough to do at Faro. We've got this amazing American stone mill that Brad had imported, and that's something I've never had a hands-on experience with. And that's just another like of this like endless sprawling tree of information that can affect bread. Like milling your own flour is just like a huge undertaking and changes it daily basically. And that's something I'm really enjoying kind of getting to know and would love to continue to explore, and how that like bleeds into the community as well.
So take us through the process of milling.
So, well, it starts with the grain. And again, that's another facet which is just endless. And we get our grain predominantly southwest grown. A lot of it grown at Gaffelney Farm, which is just outside Bristol, by Fred. He's an amazing farmer. And we get it from other places across the UK as well. But then essentially we get that in like ton quantities at the moment, half ton.
Wow.
So it's a lot, yeah. And it essentially is just responding to the grain. We get the grain in, we look at the specs, we do a few tests on it, moisture readings, and then we'll put it through the mill and taste it, mill it to a few different grades, see which is accurate, and then move from there.
Yeah, cool. So the process before the process even begins.
Well, this is it. Yeah, the more you delve in, the more there is to it, and it's just like never ending. Bradley has grown grain just outside of Bristol on 4 or few years now, sorry, that we've used in the bakery. And that, again, is just like a huge other facet of growing your own grain, monitoring that, finding the correct land, Joe. And that's before you've even got it through the mill and in the bakery. So, but that's how it was. And we've just become so used to just like sourcing roller milled flour from huge mills that this is the future, but it's such an investment to get there.
Do you find that there's an increased interest in the consumer to know where their product comes from and how it's made?
I think so, but up until a point, I think there's definitely a point where people are interested, but we have the mill in the shop. It's, you're by the till and the mill is there. And most people don't know what it is. They don't even clock it. They're just like putting the coffee on it. And you'll get a couple of people who ask questions, but I think the knowledge needs to be passed on at an earlier point. When I was at school, there was we didn't even have food tech then. So there's no like point at that age where I'm like, thinking about where my food comes from. And I think that's where the issues need to be addressed.
We've moved night and day away from that, haven't we?
Yeah.
I don't think we would survive if we went black or all the power went out.
Exactly.
So where do you see the future of baking?
I think it's an exciting point at the moment. I do think people are like coming around now and sort of listening to the issues that were brought up years ago. I reckon there's going to be a continued increase in like local bakeries, even like micro home bakers, Joe, hopefully like baking bread for the community and moving away from this like isolated world that we live in. I don't think there's ever going to be a change to the mainstream bread system. It's just too big, for want of a better word. And I just think there'll be a continued push for like local grain networks, I think.
I get the feeling that as society moves away from community, just in general, that there is a rising level of desire to get back to that. A lot of the people I talk to have, in every different avenue, it's all about community. And especially as AI advances, maybe robotics, we're going to have all of our practical needs more and more automated, but our human needs are going to have the opportunity to become more fulfilled. How much room is there for communities to come back to a communal setting, given how far away from it we've come?
I think there's huge scope, but there just needs to be the space to do it. It's a beautiful thing to see, like me making something and someone coming in, eating it, and they're sitting outside on the steps, and then people walk in, chat to them, and there's this whole feel of community, but the spaces need to be there to provide that. And then, that requires money and investment, and bread and pastry inherently don't make huge profits. That's where like the bigger companies come in and steal that. So it's like, how do we fund these community spaces? Because it would be great if we had the mill and were able to educate people and bring people together around that as a focus. but yeah, just it requires money.
I think people are more willing to spend money when there is that community aspect of it, especially if they know that they're helping out local people. And we've definitely moved so far away from that. But now it feels like we're coming back to that.
It does feel like we're coming back around.
Onto a more broad topic of Bristol in general. I think Bristol is unique in that it has a lot of community because it's a little bit smaller, but it's still the major city of the southwest. So it's in that unique spot where it can be quite community driven. Coming from Australia, it's really hard to explain the difference in culture because there's, it's so much is the same, and then there's just this little bit on the end that's different. But that little difference is like night and day. And one of the things that I've noticed is that people during the winter get depressed. During the summer, it's like this explosion.
Like euphoric.
Yeah. People sitting around the river, just lined along the river.
Yeah.
The only thing akin to that I can think of is in Australia, places like the Gold Coast along the beach on the weekend. You'll just see people, picnic rugs everywhere, barbecues all set up. But here, it's like, it's a seasonal thing. It's if the weather permits, then it happens.
You ain't doing that in the winter. No.
Do you think that the UK in general is heading more towards its own unique space, or do you think it will eventually copy America and just become like super commercialized?
Well, I mean, I hope it doesn't copy America too much. But yeah, I think British people are very proud to maintain what we've created, and I don't think it'll ever change in that way. I think it'll try, but I think there'll be too much backlash if it does. Yeah, I can't see that happening.
You are from Manchester?
Liverpool.
Liverpool, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was saying.
It's kind of like we've got a lot of cities that are clumped together. Australia's obviously a massive place.
Yeah,
but
huge.
the livable land areas tend to have a lot of cities built within. In Queensland, we've got Brisbane, Ipswich, Logan, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, all within. But if you said to somebody, "Oh, you're from Brisbane," but they're from Sunshine Coast, they'd be like, "I'm not from Brisbane.
Yeah,
I'm from Sunshine Coast."
Yeah,
and it's the same here as well.
It is,
but so much closer together because the landmass is so small. But it really is incredibly diverse from one city to the next. Even though they're so close together, they may as well be the same place. So what is Liverpool like?
I always say it's very similar to Bristol. It's like a little rough around the edges.
Yeah.
But the feeling is the same. Whenever I go back now, it just feels like for like. The people are the same. The vibe you get when you go into places is the same. I'd say it's a little more friendly, and perhaps a little more caught in the past. I'd say Bristol's a bit more forward thinking in that way.
Right.
Still feels very northern. But yeah, I do miss it. I do miss Liverpool.
Do you think that with the amount of people in the world and the amount of culture and immigration and all the rest of it, are we having an identity crisis? And how far does that actually happen on the local level?
I think like the mixing of cultures is like super important. I think it's so prominent in Bristol, and I love it for that. I don't know. I feel like identity is made up of lots of things, and people kind of help develop that, and where you pull from different groups of people. And Bristol is the prime example to me of somewhere that's like embraced lots of different cultures and different ways of life, and I love that. Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of these things that are said. They're like almost campaigns that like on a national level have some foundation, but then on a local level you don't really see.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that.
So as far as walking around the streets of Bristol, I don't feel like there's an identity crisis going on.
No.
It has a very strong identity.
It does, yeah.
So it is funny to me that there's also, I suppose what I'm saying is that on a global level, we are constantly inundated with news from everywhere and all of these incredibly important topics everywhere, but they have nothing to do with your day-to-day life. And sometimes they distract from where you can have a difference and you can, have community and all the rest of it, which is on a local level, which is what I'm trying to, foster a little bit, bring people together on this podcast, so that people aren't always just getting inundated with the same national, global problems that, are just well above all of our pay grades.
I think that's like really valid, and like in terms of my job and what I contribute to that, like we're currently I'm trying to get like involved in the Southwest Grain Network, which is like a localized grain network for the Southwest, and that's like kind of like for like with what you're describing, in that the changes on a global scale are practically impossible for me to impact. But as part of like a small network focusing in this area, like we can really make a change and help improve this area.
I definitely get that vibe from people in Bristol in general. That's also why I reached out to you. I get that same sort of feeling. There's this unconscious move for everyone to become perfect in a sense. So everyone should optimize everything, maximize everything. Everything's about, but even on an individual level. So it doesn't matter what your hobbies are, doesn't matter what your passions are. Just go and get the job that gives you the most money. Pursue whatever mastery is going to give you the most success. And if we move too far in that direction, one, it corrodes any level of diversity amongst us as individuals, as we all start wearing exactly the same clothing, saying the same things, but also, it's kind of in some ways a waste of your life if you spent it just pursuing vapid things. When I think if you look at people that have been really successful, they've eventually got onto their passion. In some ways, you've, from a young age, had that in you. But a lot of people don't have that. They have no idea what to do. They have no idea what their passions are. What advice would you give to somebody that basically a young you and they have no idea what they want to do?
I mean, I would say just go out there and explore. Like, I wish I'd gone into kitchens when I was younger. I wish I'd just like got my parents to take me places, and it is very hard. Like, I was just like shut down from such an early age, and was like echoing what you just said, Joe. You can't be a chef. You won't make any money from that, Joe. You're too talented. You've got too good a grades to waste. Like, you have to do sixth form. You have to go to uni. You have to get a job and a suit and all that. And it made it really hard to like pursue something that I really enjoyed. I was like, why can't I do this as a job? I love cooking. And I would just say speak to people. It's the best way. Just ask around in your family, ask anyone who you know. Like, it sounds so corny, but just like, don't give up on that thought that you've got, because it usually is right.
That's the exact advice I would give to people as well. Get out there and do as many things as you can, experience, have the conversations, and then through doing everything, you'll find something.
Yeah, and it gets harder the older you get.
Yeah, I agree. So what's been your most enjoyable part of the journey?
I've got plenty of unenjoyable, or if that's even a word. But probably going to Germany. Like, Bradley, who owns Faro, kindly essentially helped me fulfill a dream of mine. I've done many things in this career, but that was just like, it was like I was in like heaven, like bread heaven. Michael, who owns Brock Bruder in Freiburg is a super talented baker, like, yeah, like god tier baker. And Brad sent me out there. I spent a few days in the bakery, was making like pretzels, these amazing rye breads, watching him like make panettone. It was just like mind blowing. And that is something I'll never forget. And it is also something that when I hopefully do open my own place, that I will pass on to other people and push on for like people working at other bakeries and like creating that bond. And
Yeah. And what challenges do you face?
On the daily, just getting up for work is the first one. Starting sometimes at like 2 a.m. is very difficult.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, like just doing the job, it sounds like so basic, but every day I'm just like, can I actually do this job? It's so intense, and coming out of it each day is just so rewarding. I mean, there are larger challenges like we were speaking about earlier about like the food system and improving that, but I try not to think of that on a personal level, but just day to day, literally, can I make this bread today? Is the biggest challenge.
What would you like to learn in the future? Is there any particular cuisine or type of pastry?
Yes, I would love to learn panettone, like being that kind of like in some ways OCD like perfectionist character. That is like the epitome to me of process, and that would be something I'd love to learn. But yeah, every day I'm trying to learn. It's either milling, it's either how can I laminate this better, like who's doing this differently, what blends of flours can I use this time. It's just like endless.
Interesting question. So there are a lot of professions where sometimes the thing that people are good at, they tend to not be good at in their personal life. So there's doctors that don't look after their health, and accountants that are really terrible with money.
Yeah.
How much of that is true of the chef world in general? Like, you just go home and microwave a meal.
Yeah.
But then specifically in the bakery.
So chef world, from my experience, definitely. Like when I was chefing, you would like start at 6 a.m. I'd have like an hour in the afternoon, and I'd get home at midnight. And like I was 18, 19 at the time, and so diet was just like not for me.
Yeah.
So it would be like meal deals or like microwave pasta or whatever, if I ate at all. In the baking world, I think it's a bit different. Like I try and make time to sit down for lunch. Like it doesn't happen every day, but we do try and like make staff food, take a break.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I think my team are going to hold me up for this, but we do try it. And I hope to think it's better in kitchens now as well. I've got stories of friends telling me about staff food, and like it's like someone's job to actually make food for the team.
That's good.
Because it's really important.
Yeah.
Like we spend our days feeding people and preparing all this stuff, and we don't look after ourselves.
Yeah. I think it would be a great travesty if, being such a skilled baker, you just went and bought a packet.
I mean,
croissant.
I don't want to expose myself. I would never go to like frozen or packet croissants, but there's been times where I've had like sliced white bread and stuff like that.
I mean, it's unavoidable.
I would say it is, yeah.
Okay, so let's say that I was interested in getting started in baking patisserie specifically, and I've been engaging in repetition, just practicing, but it's still not working out for me. What can I do? Who should I go to? What courses are there? What would you recommend?
Sure. I mean, YouTube is an amazing source of information for me as well, Joe. On all levels, there's content there. I think if you were like super passionate, just go to a bakery. And I mean, I would hope any bakery would take you.
Yeah.
We certainly do. If someone wants to come in and spend a day, then they can.
That's cool.
And yeah, I could like, what's the word? point out any like things that I think you could improve on. Books are another source of information. It's just like endless. I've got so many, but there's a lot of good ones for starting out and jumping into at different points where you feel like you can learn. In terms of like schooling and stuff, there isn't really much like official for courses for baking. There's the School of Artisan Food, which is great. And there's a few other like local sourdough courses and things, but who knows? Maybe one day.
Sourdough has dominated the bread market on every menu.
It is, yeah, it is.
Do you think it deserves that position?
Well, I think it does, unequivocally, but it's definitely being like lent on as a kind of like, oh look, something's sourdough.
Yeah.
And that means it's better.
Yeah.
And it's not always, more often it's not. And real sourdough, which we make at the bakery and many others do across the country, is better for you. But I definitely think it's been lent on as a trend for sure. And that's what catches people out. And there's like the Real Bread campaign are really good at pushing for like real sourdough, which I think is important.
I've heard soda bread is never had it before. Can't find it anywhere.
Soda bread's so easy to make as well at home. Yeah, that would be a really good starting point. Yeah. I've got a lot of Irish family, so I should be able to make it. But it's a really like simple way to like introduce yourself into bread without the pressure of like, oh God, I've got to maintain this sourdough starter and I've got to feed it now and then I've got to wake up and feed it later. And
do you think using those automatic bread machines are just as good as using the oven or better?
It's a better step for sure. My partner's mum has one, and it's definitely a step in the right direction for sure. But there's nothing that beats just like mixing flour and water.
Yeah, true.
If you know how to I think it can be this really like scary thing of like making bread, but it's actually really simple if you know the process to do it, and it can be the easiest thing to do at home, but people just don't know.
Have you ever had any disasters? Not in a terrible sense, but with bread just exploding everywhere.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I always say that if there's something that could go wrong, I've done it.
Oh, really?
And it's pretty much true, because it's like I've missed the salt out of like 100 kilos worth of dough, which is just like game over. I've left like loads of bread in the oven and they've just come out black. I've missed salt out the croissant dough. I've like put too much water in stuff. It's just endless, and I've done it all. And I think that's the way you learn. Like, it felt really weird at first because I was like trying to be this perfectionist person. So when I'd be confronted with a mistake, I'd be like, oh God, what have I done? But in reality, it's just the skill comes in knowing how to deal with those situations. So even now, I'm like, I could still make a mistake when I go in tomorrow, but it's knowing how to react to that.
Unless you've done a little bit of home baking or any other type of baking, you can fall into the trap of thinking it's very difficult to make mistakes. It's just, you just put these ingredients together and you make a bread, but nothing could be further from the truth. I recall a story of the gluten monster, where this starter just exploded all over the bench tops. Came out to this thing, crawling down the street. So it really is a skill and an art. I'd say from what I see, it is an art. It's not just a skill that you learn. There's a personal touch that goes into it. There's this place in Brisbane called Icing Hill, and they're a Korean bakery, and they make the most intricate things. They'll make a cake that looks like an apple. You've probably seen Is It Cake?
Yes, yeah.
Everything turns out to be cake.
Yeah.
But there really is an interest in this art form, and people want to eat something that looks incredibly visually pleasing. When do you feel like you've created something that is art? Like what Is it you've done it perfectly, or is it a particular technique that, and you step back and go, I'm really proud of that?
It used to be like a visual thing. For me, it was like, if this looks right or looks great, then I've done it.
Yeah.
But the more, or the further I go in my career, the more I've started to realize that it's not about what you necessarily on face value see. So for me, when I feel like I've cracked it, it's something that tastes amazing, firstly, texturally is amazing, and then also is traceable in some way. So at the moment, we've been making these like galettes, which are like a beautiful, rough, flaky pastry. At the moment, they're filled with strawberries from Cheddar, just down the road, some elderflower that I pick on the way to the bakery.
Wow.
And it's like that. Joe, sure, it's not the most beautiful, like, finessed thing, but when you break it down, it's just, to me, it's close to perfect, not perfect.
Why do you think it is the case that when we know how our food was made, it tastes better?
I feel like it's like security in a way. So it feels right. So if you're able to somehow trace back where the ingredients come from, or even see who's making your food, it gives you security. So if you go into a shop, you just have no idea.
Yeah, it could be. You could be onto something. It could be a like some sort of evolutionary thing where if we know where it all came from, then it's probably less likely to be poison or something.
You would hope so. Like a loaf of bread from the shop will have like 40 ingredients.
Yeah, true.
And the ones we make have 3. So, I mean, that says it all, I think.
It's not like it's incredibly expensive to go and pick up a loaf from a bakery.
No, it's not. And sure, Joe, we sell, it's like nearly £5 for a loaf of bread compared to like, it's like 20p even sometimes in the supermarket. And whether it comes in the form of like, I don't know, subsidies or something, because it is a bit unapproachable for some people. Joe, when I was growing up, we could never have
Really?
dropped £5 on a loaf for sure. But I mean, we offer like half loaves, and we're like looking at like an approachable kind of like loaf that might be in some way subsidized or help with that. Yeah.
I have trouble with the pound because I'm always converting it back to Australian dollars, and also inflation. So I don't know whether something is incredibly expensive or it's just the fact that we have a cost of living crisis and inflation out of control. But I would say this on the idea of not being able to afford it. You're right. There's times where you can't afford a loaf of bread. I think most people have been through that at some stage in their life, whether it's growing up or afterwards when they first moved out of home, and you've got to be.
Yeah.
But when you buy something that's worth next to nothing, I find you don't care about it as much, and so it'll go moldy before you. There's no incentive to put it in the freezer. Whereas if you pay a little bit more for something, you tend to take care of it more and enjoy it. So I've got this idealistic idea of the perfect communities that will one day exist, and I hope one day exist. And I'm putting my money on AI and robotics to solve all of our cost of living crisis and everything, and that we'll just live in these communities, and you'll go to your bakery and you get a coffee, and then maybe we don't all work so much, or we don't work as many days, and it does come back to a sort of community thing. I don't think it'll ever happen, but
I mean, it sounds great. It sounds very dreamy, but yeah. I mean, I would love that too. I think if we could live in a world where we look after each other more, I think it's only going to be a good place.
Yeah. If you were to pick a best country to have bakery, well, I suppose, tell me baking. Where's the best place in the world?
I mean, it's stacked at the moment. There's lots of good stuff happening in Copenhagen. I went there a few years ago. Just like the bakery culture there is really exciting. America, there's plenty going on.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's a similar like in terms of like the UK having lots of like kind of high end bakeries, I guess there's a
Yeah.
lot around America that are really prominent. Um, I mean, Germany's really exciting. I would say Copenhagen. I
Yeah.
think that's where it's happening.
Get to Copenhagen.
Yeah, that's the one. If you want to tick off a lot, go there.
From what I hear, everybody tells me that all of the pastries in France taste incredible. And you could even buy a pastry in France, bring it back here, and it won't taste as good. Is there anything to that? Or do you think it's overrated?
I don't know. I think overrated would be harsh, but it's certainly not the like gold standard to me. I mean, and that's just talking of Central. Like, if you explore France, which I unfortunately haven't been able to yet, I believe there's like still pockets of like insane bakeries. But I think it's in some ways commercialized a little bit in the center. I did go to Paris a few years ago, and again, there's a few solid bakeries. But yeah, I think the hype is a little overrated.
I thought it would have been. I find that even with the idea that pasta in Italy is the best, I'm sure that once upon a time that was true.
Yeah.
But all of that art and skill has moved globally. You know, talking about your repetition thing, how often do people make pasta? It's so ubiquitous, and I have had some of the best pasta in my life. Not in Italy, but in Bali.
Wow.
Which is, you couldn't be further away.
Yeah, literally.
You know, in culture and distance. But it's because when hubs open up in foreign countries, a lot of the time people from Italy or wherever will end up there and start their own restaurant. And then, but it also evolves because, especially with like multinational sort of cities that have a lot of people come and go, they're constantly evolving. Whereas, you know, the historical ma and pa shops, they've been doing the same recipe forever. Although there's a quaintness that comes to that, and I'm sure that plays into the taste of the food. They might not be evolving as much with the global change in taste. I feel like taste in general has changed. You know, there's everyone's getting more and more fussy about what they expect, which is a good thing, I think, because it keeps the creativity moving forward in a lot of areas, and especially with baking. What's your personal favorite pastry?
My favorite to make is a croissant. I would say my favorite to eat at the moment is a pain au choc. Changes, but at the moment, pain au chocolat.
I just can't even imagine making it.
It is kind of wild, and like that's full circle for me. To make it and then eat it is just like, it's just, it never gets old.
Have you noticed that more people are looking for jobs in kitchens and in bakeries?
Yes, but sort of 80% aren't skilled in that way. You know, I think a lot of people are wanting to shift into that or into this industry, which is really great. But then there's that sort of sticking point where it's like, okay, you want to be a baker, but then you haven't got the skills to immediately do that. And so I think that, that kind of needs to be addressed, because I would say there's a shortage of bakers. Actually, I would say there's a shortage of skilled bakers. There's a huge pool of bakers, but having access to training is hard in this country. Unless you've got a lot of money.
Is that part of the reason why you go international to learn a lot of things?
I think, there's bakeries I would go to in the UK to learn, for sure. I just think there needs to be a more accessible route for people to learn. I don't know what the answer is, other than to go into bakeries at the moment.
Every now and then I'll enter into a cafe and I'll have this beautiful selection of glistening pastries. And then I'll see the name of it and I couldn't pronounce that in my wildest dreams. I'm pretty sure there's been 5 things that you said during this conversation that I have no idea what they are, and I couldn't repeat them. Is there anything new that you see that maybe it's a traditional French pastry that you try and introduce to people that they've not had before? Because I'm sure there's lots of things that lots of people have never seen before, but you still produce.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, the stuff I'm seeing is stuff I don't want to recreate,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, I don't want to make a giant croissant.
Yeah.
I don't want to make, like, a croissant in a cube or stuff like that. The stuff I want to do is, like, integrate more grain into our products. And even when we changed like 5% of the flour in our croissant to a fresh milled flour, and people just weren't into it. And
Really?
and I think that's the stuff I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the industry as a whole is suffering from like what we touched on earlier about like social media and Instagram and this visual thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I suppose there's lots of things where there's the Instagram version of it, and then there's the
for sure
reality of it.
Like that's couldn't be more true in baking, because I mean everyone will say the same, but you only post your like, I'm not going to post something that looks rubbish. And it creates this image of like everything's got to visually be really great, and there's no kind of gravitas given to like something that can be sourced really well, taste amazing, technically great, but it looks a bit beige or plain. But when you actually eat it, it's like, mind blowing.
I've been into a number of restaurants that have done this, where they'll give you a little spiel about where everything comes from, what's gone into it. Why don't more places do that? If there is a story related to food that makes it taste better.
Yeah, I think it could be a thing, Joe. Inform people about where the grain is coming from, who has grown it, and create that story. And I guess that's on the bakers to pass on that information.
Yeah, I see a lot of niche coffee places where they'll say the beans are from here. They have notes of this, and this.
Super trendy.
You have to close your eyes and
yeah,
I can taste the blueberry.
Yeah.
I suppose that would be really cool. I'd like that if I went into the bakery and at the counter, had percentages of...
Yeah, like, I mean, we have loads of grain in the bakery, often hidden away, really, just out because of space. But, like, if they were visible and people knew that there wasn't just, like, one wheat, there's so many varieties. But, again, it's just,
I think in some ways having a visible mill solves a lot of that.
It does. I mean, it does for sure. If you, like, step in and you can see the grain going into the mill, it's just I imagine that's pretty cool. There are like certain like flavor wheels and like grain wheels that exist, so there's definitely material out there, but getting it across.
So you said that some people didn't like the change in the recipe. How much of that is just because people aren't used to it, and how much of it is it because you have to really try and get a combination right?
I think when you get so used to something, like, change is hard. True. And if we perhaps started out that way, maybe it would have been easier.
Yeah. Do you often or at all bake for other people?
Outside of work? Yeah. 99% of the times, no.
Is it one of those things that the profession, because you do it all the time, last thing you
I wouldn't say it's like I don't enjoy it, but I like to like leave that in work and try and outside of work just relax, and like I read up on a lot of things, but in terms of making stuff, generally no. I find it's like a healthy way to be. Like if you are fully absorbed and just it's all encompassing, it can be quite overwhelming. So like when I go into work, I'm like pumped every day.
Well, your life is a bit of a success story in a way, because you were pushed away from the very thing that you are so skilled at and have the temperament for it and have a desire to develop that skill. Do you think that pushing away would have worked out differently? For example, if you were encouraged from a young age to pursue, would you be in a better place now, do you think? Or has the adversity made you more sharp, push more?
That's a good question. I mean, maybe I would have been further along than where I am now, but equally, I think it did make me want it more. It made me like hyper focused on what I wanted. In some ways, I wanted to like prove to people that I could do it. Like, it sounds a bit basic, but like the fact that they were saying you can't do this made me want to do it more.
Yeah.
And like when I dropped out of uni, at that point I was like, I don't really care. I was just like, I have to do this.
Yeah.
And saying all that, if there was the chance to have done it at school, I would have like lapped it up. But yeah, I think it definitely pushed me more.
Yeah, and it's hard to say what would have happened.
For sure, like anything could have happened, Joe. I could have ended up being an architect or whatever that I might have been. But yeah, it definitely it made me think like to have a plan. That was one thing that when I dropped out, I was like, I've got nothing, Joe.
Yeah.
This has to work. So I had a plan of like, I want to go to this bakery. I want to do a year here. I want to go to this bakery. I want to progress to this level, and then I want to go here. And every step up until Faro was just like planned meticulously.
So what possibly could the future hold for you in that in the skill development thing? Like, what does 10 years of your craft look like?
I mean, it's got me to the point where I think I feel like I could do something myself if I wanted to. It's a weird one because I'm just like always thinking about learning and like evolving. So even though I've been doing it this long, I still feel like somewhat like, I don't know, a bit of an amateur in many ways. Like I look at other people and think, wow, I'm like, I don't know anything. And that kind of excites me.
Things like baking, which is the incredible skill, would you keep yourself involved in that? Or does the future of it, do you just keep progressing to the point where you progress yourself out of the craft?
Yeah, I think there's a real issue with that happening across the industry, whereby people, whether it be like people are leaving and you're presented with this chance to just move up, are progressing way beyond their skill level. And I felt it some ways, I had the chances to maybe head up somewhere when I didn't feel I was ready. And like, I always compare it to, say, in Japan, where you've got to be like 10 years minimum or something to be a sushi chef.
Right.
And like, I think in the UK and baking in general, something like that is true, because like I've been doing this like 10 years and I still don't feel like I'm like an expert in any way.
Let's say you go for another 10 years of baking. What do you expect your skills to be like?
I think for me, I want to push in like a kind of managerial way. Like obviously I want to develop my skills, but I want to learn how to like work with people and like transfer knowledge and like bring people up together. I think that's my like where I want to explore. In terms of like baking, it's hard to pinpoint anything. I want to improve my bread skills. I want to improve my milling skills for sure. Pastry, it's just,
Well, I'm very glad that you found your calling in a sense, and you have incredible skill. And anyone who hasn't checked out what Ben creates, I encourage you to go to Faro's and have a look for yourself. The last thing I'm going to ask you, what's the most important thing you've learnt in life that you would impart to somebody younger on a similar journey?
Just trust your gut.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's a common one, but like usually what you think is right. And I'm glad that my gut to drop out.
Yeah.
I just trusted it and I stuck with it and I believed in myself and it worked. And I think that's a pretty sound piece of advice.
Well, Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Keep in touch.
Yeah, definitely.